against the sweep of its fearful scimitar. I fell suddenly calm, and lay smiling in the glittering death, as a child at some rare bauble. There was another interval of utter insensibility. There was another interval of utter insensibility. It was brief, for upon again lapsing into life, there had been no perceptible descent in the pendulum. It might have been long, for I knew there were demons who took note of my swoon, and who could have arrested the vibration at my pleasure. Upon my recovery, too, I felt very inexpressibly sick and weak, as though long initiation, even amid the agonies of that period, the human nature craved food with painful effort. I outstretched my left arm as far as my balance permitted, and took possession of the small remnant which had been spared me by the rats. As I put a portion of it within my lips, there rose from my mind a half-formed thought of joy, of hope. Yet what business had I with hope? But I felt also that it had perished in its formation. In vain I struggled to perfect, to regain it. Long suffering had nearly annihilated all my ordinary powers of mind. I was an imbecile, an idiot. The vibration of the pendulum was at right angles to my length. I saw the crescent had designed to cross the region of the heart. It was fray the surge of my robe, and would return and repeat the operations again and again, notwithstanding. Its terrifically wide sweep, some 30 feet or more, and the hissing vigor of its descent, sufficient to sunder these very walls of iron. Still the fraying of my robe would be all that for several minutes it would accomplish. And at this I paused. I dared not to go farther than this reflection. I dwelt upon it with pertinacity of attention, as if in so dwelling I could arrest here the descent of the steel. I forced myself to ponder upon the sound of the crescent as it should pass across the garment, upon the peculiar thrilling sensation with the frictions of cloth produces on the nerves. I pondered upon all its frivolity, until my teeth were on edge. Down, steadily down, it crept. I took a frenzied pleasure in contrasting its downward with its lateral velocity. To its right, to its left, far and wide, with a shriek of a damned spirit, and then howled as the other, or the one idea grew predominant. As the one or the other idea grew predominant. Down, certainly and relentlessly down, it vibrated within 3 inches of my bosom. I struggled violently, furiously to free my left arm. It was free only from the elbow to the hand. I could reach the latter from the plater beside me to my mouth with great effort, but no farther. I could have broken the fastenings above the elbow. I would have seized and attempted to arrest the pendulum. I might as well have been attempted to arrest an avalanche. Down, still unceasingly, still inevitably down, I gasped and struggled at each vibration. I shrunk convulsively at its every sweep. My eyes followed its onward, upward whirls with eagerness of the most unmeaning despair. They closed themselves spasmodically on my descent, although death would have been relief. Oh, how unspeakable! Still I quivered in every nerve to think of how slight and sinking of the machinery would precipitate the keen, glistening axe upon my bosom. It was hope that prompted the nerve to quiver, the frame to shrink. It was hope, the hope that triumphs on the rack, that whispers to the death-condemned even the dungeons of the Inquisition. I saw that some 10 or 12 vibrations would bring the steel in actual contact with my robe, and with this observation there suddenly came over my spirit all the keen collected calmness of despair, For the first time during many hours, or perhaps days, I thought it now occurred to me that the bandage, or surginal, which enveloped me was unique. It was tied by no separate cord. The first stroke of the razor-like crescent athwart any portion of the band would so detach it that it might be unwound from my person by means of my left hand. But how fearful in that case! The proximity of the steel, the result of the slightest struggle, how deadly! Was it likely, moreover, that the minions of the torture had not foreseen and provided for this possibility? Was it probable that the bandage across my bosom in the track of the pendulum, dreading to find my fate, and as it seemed, my last hope frustrated, I so far elevated my hand so as to obtain a distinct view of my breast. The surcingle enveloped my limbs and body close in all directions, save in the path of the destroying crescent. Scarcely had I dropped my hand, scarcely as I dropped my head back into its original position, when there flashed upon my mind what I cannot better describe as an unformed half of that idea of deliverance to which I had previously alluded, of which a moiety only floated indeterminately through my brain when I raised food to my burning lips. The whole thought was now present, feeble, scarcely sane, scarcely definite, but still entire, proceeded at once with the nervous energy of despair to attempt its execution. For many hours, the immediate vicinity of the low framework upon which I lay had been literally swarming with rats. They were wild, bold, ravenous, their red eyes glaring upon me as if they waited but for motionless on my part to make me their prey. To what food, I thought, had they been accustomed in the well? They had devoured, in spite of all my efforts to prevent them, all but a small remnant of the contents of the dish. I had fallen into the habitual seesaw, or the wave of the hand about the platter, but at length the unconscious uniformity of the movement deprived it of effect. In their voracity, the vermin frequently fastened their sharp fangs in my fingers, with the particles of the oily and spicy viand which now remained. I thoroughly rubbed the bandage wherever I could reach it, and then raised my hand from the floor and lay breathlessly still. At first the ravenous animals were startled and terrified at the change, at the cessation of music. At first the ravenous animals were startled and terrified by the change. At the cessation of movement they shrank alarmedly back. They sought the well, but this was only for a moment. Observing that I remained without motion, one or two of the boldest leapt upon the framework and smelt at the surcingle. This seemed the signal for a general rush. Forth from the well they hurried in fresh troops. They clung to the wood, they overran it. They leapt in hundreds upon my person. The measured movement of the pendulum disturbed them not at all. Avoiding its strokes, they busied themselves with the anointed bandage. They pressed, they swarmed upon me in ever-accumulating heaps. They writhed upon my throat, their cold lips sought my own. I was half stifled by their thronging pressure. Disgust, for which the world has no name, swelled my bosom, and chilled with a heavy clamminess in my heart. Yet 1 minute, and I felt the struggle would be over.